I sent him a message asking him to open our relationship, but he didn't reply. I'm not sure if I did something wrong, but losing someone you care about can make you think about everything you've ever known. I keep asking myself questions, and I can't help but think I might have been wrong, but how could I be? My name's Joanne. For privacy's sake, I won't be using real names except for mine. I am 24 years old. I have a boyfriend. I'm sorry, it's past tense now. He broke up with me. I wouldn't say he broke up with me. I think it's fair to say that he ghosted me. I just asked him to open our relationship. It seems crazy, right? I'm writing this because I'm confused and pained. I regret asking because maybe if I hadn't, we'd still be together. I don't know anything anymore. I've always known men who love to be in an open relationship. We'd both be free to do things we want, even inside the relationship. I thought that was what all men preferred. So I was shocked when he did me. I was and still am head over heels for Max. I was really ready to tie the knot with him, even though I had always thought that a committed relationship wouldn't last. My parents and my aunties and uncles didn't prove me wrong. I grew up in a big family with different step-aunties and step-uncles. My grandparents weren't exactly faithful. They were together, then separated for a few years. While they were separated, they had different partners. They even had children with their partners before they'd found love again. They had more kids, and those became my aunt and uncles. I never met them, but I heard a lot of stories about them. My parents met at a seminar and got together. My dad didn't want to end up like his parents, who had lots of stepsisters and brothers. He wanted to be committed to his wife. My own mother and he did try, but it was difficult. You have the genes of two people who were. He was never exactly faithful. He ended up having a girlfriend who gave birth to 2 kids for him. My stepbrother's mom was livid after all the promises he made. Then he just went ahead and broke them. She left my sisters and me with him, and then my dad got married again to the woman who got pregnant for him. She also left when she found out that my dad wasn't faithful either. I could go on and give you examples from my own family. I have a pretty messed up family. I didn't want to end up like my grandparents or my parents, and especially not like my Aunt Mar. She's still in prison for killing her husband, who cheated on her throughout their marriage with different women. She couldn't stand that and put a knife through him when they had a fight about it. I didn't want to become them, so I decided long before that even if I had a relationship, it would be an open one. I didn't want to be like my Aunt Martha, who was unfaithful to her husband, or to be called a cheater myself. I guess it's better to be safe than sorry. I would rather know all his partners or flings, but with the understanding that I'm the main person and he is too. He would know all my partners aside from him, but he would be my main. This approach worked well with all my relationships. I had other guys I was seeing while with the person I loved, but I guess I should have realized that not even letting a man cheat on you is not enough. I could have made him stay. I understand that now. Why else did my other relationships not last? My first boyfriend was Ryan. I loved Ryan. When he asked me to be his girlfriend, I was happy. Ryan was the one guy I didn't ask for an open relationship with. I guess I wanted to test the waters, see whether he'd be faithful. But Ryan, despite all the love he claimed to have for me, didn't mind sleeping with my doormat behind my back. I broke up with him. He begged me back, but I couldn't face getting together with him again, so I moved on. In my second year, I met JN. He was just the sweetest guy, but of course he was just like the rest. I did ask for an open relationship because I didn't want a repeat of what happened with Ryan, and he agreed. Looking back, I realized he had probably agreed then because he wanted to accept any conditions just to date me. The relationship started out sweet and romantic. He would call me, take me to lunch when our classes we didn't have any major issues. He would buy me nice gifts, and I was happy being with him. However, I knew it was only a matter of time before he met someone else. When I realized he wasn't going to start seeing someone else, I ended it. I told him first and he was angry. He didn't show it at first, but when I continued seeing other people with him, he became possessive and aggressive. I had to break it off with him. I didn't date anyone until after I finished college. I was working as an editor for a publishing company, but I won't mention the name for privacy's sake. It was everything I wanted, and I was very happy. I got to work there and met Max, who is a popular novelist. I'm not using his real name because he's a unique writer, and his books always sell as one of the highest in every bookshop. So, when he came to our company to edit his new book, I was really excited. He said the former company he used wasn't up to his standard anymore. He came for the best one, which is the company I worked at. He had a very short deadline because he was having the book launched in a few weeks, so he needed to get that done fast. I was over the moon, especially when my boss told me I would be working with him directly on his new book. I worked harder than I ever have because I wanted it to be perfect. The fact that I was the first one to get a hold of his new book and read it, even edit it, made me feel special. Max was pretty happy with the work. I did a great job in the short time I had, and he was really impressed. He asked me to dinner after the book launch to celebrate. I said yes, but I didn't think much about it. He was a well-known celebrity, and I'm sure he couldn't be seen hanging out with a mere editor like me. I know it sounds silly, but that's how I felt at the time. He did keep to his promise though and took me out to dinner. I had a great time that evening. Maybe it was because he was a writer, words came easily to him, and the conversation flowed. I found myself chatting about things I don't usually talk about, especially on a first date. I think being an observer is one reason why his novels are so realistic. He noticed everything about me, from the temperature on my cheeks to the hem of my dress. When the evening came to an end, I didn't want it to end. He took me home, promising to call the next day if he could. He was so polite, asking for permission to call me. I was really impressed. So, I kissed him. I initiated our first kiss, and I didn't regret it afterwards. He was an amazing kisser. Eventually, I invited him in and we had sex. I know it was my first time ever having sex on a first date, but I didn't do it with my other boyfriends. I guess I just realized that Max was just special, but I couldn't even keep him. My relationship with Max was everything I could have asked for. He was kind, sweet, patient, and charming. We had the most amazing sex life. It was incredible. But it didn't erase the doubt in my mind that he'd probably end things or lose interest when he met someone new. He made it so easy to trust him and rely on him that it was almost scary whenever we spoke. He'd talk about his future plans and always involve me in them. He had no intention of hiding our relationship, but I didn't want to be exposed to the public. If it didn't work out, I asked him to keep it a secret. He agreed just to make me happy. The workers knew about our relationship. He didn't hide the way he looked at me or his habit of wrapping his hands around my waist. We were together for a few months, and I couldn't even ask for an open relationship because Max was everything I wanted. I couldn't imagine relating with someone else as much as I did with Max. That was until Alex came into the picture. Alex came into our company as an intern, which we weren't expecting at that time of year. We were surprised, but that was until we found out that he was related to our CEO. I hadn't planned to cheat on Max with Alex. My plan was to ignore him, because I knew that my job could easily be on the line if I got involved with him and I couldn't risk it. I loved my job and I loved working there, so ignoring him was easy. It was easy to ignore him and mind my own business, but then I was called up by the boss and asked to keep an eye on him. I was a bit surprised, but I didn't show it. I mean, why me of all people? They surely knew that I wasn't exactly the best at watching out for things, but I did anyway. You know, a command is a command, no matter how it's given. He would come up to me with every question he had. At first, it felt good because I saw the looks the ladies were giving me. When he was in the office, it seemed like the other ladies wanted to be in my position, especially Bella. She was always trying to compete with me, and I was grateful for that because she made my work more challenging and made me appreciate my hard work. So, seeing Alex with me, she was in a bad mood nearly all the time, so it made it easier to look like I was doing the watching out, but not until I noticed that I was getting too attached to him. At first, I disregarded it because I liked him as a person. He was fun, smart, challenging, and had some other attributes I love to see in people. I was just starting out, so I thought maybe it was why I felt the need to help through those phases. But it wasn't just that I found myself looking forward to work, not just because I loved my job, but because I wanted to see a certain person. My wardrobe became too bland for work, and I started buying new clothes. At first, I even convinced myself it wasn't because of him, but because I needed a change of clothes. But I soon realized that I was getting all dolled up because I was fishing for a compliment from him. It was a hard pill to swallow. I often found myself wandering in thoughts, thinking about Alex's sexy smile, his abs that don't try to hide themselves in the clothes he wears, his perfume that smells like seduction, his eyes that just look like you could get lost in them any second, and even the way he snickers when he doesn't agree with something had begun to sound sexy to me. Max noticed my distant behavior and asked about it because I was starting to get distracted thinking about someone else while I was with him. I told him nothing and lied about work being a little extra, but I knew that I was starting to compare Max and Alex, and that didn't make me feel good. I loved Max and I didn't want anything to it was a bit of a risk, but there was just something about Alex that I couldn't put my finger on. So, I decided to take the initiative and limit the way we related, focusing more on work and Max. Since Alex didn't know about my feelings, it wouldn't be that hard. Before I moved on, I was completely wrong. My infatuation only grew stronger, and I started to get really frustrated with how things were going. Then Max had to go on a book tour, but I couldn't leave my job or get a vacation on short notice, so he had to leave me behind for 2 months. Maybe sexual frustration played a part. I was so wrapped up in my feelings that I was highly sensitive to Alex's voice, even though I tried not to cheat on Max. I was really into Max, and I was convinced that he wasn't going to cheat on me during his 2-month tour. I was really worried he was going to cheat on me. After all, he had the whole 2 months to get serious with another girl he met on his trip, get her pregnant or get married to her, and then come back home, hoping I could be on the side. I know it sounds paranoid, but those were my thoughts. And, on top of that, his personal assistant was a woman and she was very beautiful. I didn't want to have to wait around while I got cheated on and regret being faithful while he wasn't around. His assistant was a woman and she was very beautiful, so I didn't want to have to wait around while I got cheated on and regret being faithful while he wasn't. The affair didn't start until almost immediately after Max left for his tour. It started a week before Max was supposed to come back. I was excited he was going to be back. He said he would be back, but I still had doubts and worries. He called and kept me updated on what was going on. He told me he loved and missed me and couldn't wait to be back home with me. But I just didn't want to trust him. I knew I should, but I didn't want to end up like everyone else in my family was alone, heartbroken, and with plenty of kids with different father name tags. We're a tightly knit family, but it didn't make me want their lifestyles that day, the day it all began. I was in the office trying to finish up a work assignment that I was editing and was supposed to hand in the next day. The rest of the team had left, but I couldn't leave, so I stayed back to avoid having to submit work I wasn't proud of. Alex stayed back too, and I didn't even know. Maybe if I'd known, I'd have just taken my work home to finish it, but I was staying alone since Max wasn't back from his trip yet, so I thought it was no problem. I wasn't planning on staying back to finish up before going home to crash. Alex had walked up to me and asked if he could help with my work. I told him no, even though I enjoyed his company. I like to work alone to avoid distractions. He probably saw that I wasn't about to get into a conversation with him while working and left. I thought he was going to leave it at that, but he came back hours later, when I was finishing up. It was dark outside, and I was hungry, so I accepted his offer to eat together in the office's small tea room. We talked about things we enjoyed doing and not doing, and other random stuff, apart from work. We chatted about other things until he asked about my relationship. I was surprised he knew about me and Max, but then I remembered he probably heard the news from someone at work. I didn't think much of it and told him when Max was due to be back. He started asking me random questions about Max and me. Like if I was truly happy in the relationship, and if I didn't have my head turned in another man's direction, I shouldn't have. I know. But I just couldn't help myself and replied, giving answers to his questions. Maybe it was the emotions I've had. The food must have been drugged because when he kissed me, I went along with it. I knew I was crazy when he kissed me the first time, and I responded eagerly. But I was probably a lot crazier when he invited me to spend every night with him at his place, just until Max came back. I shouldn't have agreed to do that. I was just thinking, what if Max was doing the same where he was? I agreed, but I don't think I was thinking clearly. Let me say I wasn't thinking with my head screwed on. At that time, I just wanted to get it all out of my system. I decided to spend some time with Alex to get him out of my head. I thought that by the time Max was back, my head and heart would be in the right place. I also thought that Alex would be out of my head and mind. We had both agreed that everything wasn't going to last past a week. Well, that's what I thought, but I guess fate had a lot in store for me. That week, I spent every night at Alex's place. We talked about everything, including my relationship. We ate, drank, and then had sex. Then, I went to my place in the morning, bathed, and got ready for work. I went back to work and ignored Alex like nothing was between us. It was exciting keeping it a secret between us, and no one even had a clue. Alex was crazy and would do crazy things like sneak into the female bathroom with me to make out, give me a slap when he walked past me, or wink at me stylishly across the room. It was a real thrill for me, and I was already thinking of nothing else until Max was back, and I knew my relationship with Alex had to end. I was really sad because I thought that a week would help me get over it, and I would become bored, but it didn't. Every day was more exciting than the last. I was the one who picked Max up from the airport when he arrived. Before that, I was with Alex. He was sad to see us break up, because he hadn't had enough of me. In fact, I was happy to see him too. When I saw him walking towards me with his luggage, and a big goofy smile on his face, I realized how much I had missed him. I could see in his smile that he'd missed me too, even though I knew I'd spent the week thinking about someone else. I really did love Max and I didn't want to lose him. But I did care about Alex and loved how he made me feel like I was playing a dangerous game, and that someone could actually get hurt. It was a scary yet thrilling experience. Max was telling me all about his trip while I was driving us home. I was just waiting for him to tell me about another woman he had cheated on me with. I would tell him I also had cheated on him. We would both forgive ourselves and move on. Was I being delusional because Max never mentioned anything about another woman, even though I kept asking questions that would probably lead there? The only woman he did talk about was Mary, his mentor, who had come to surprise him on one of the shows where he had to talk about his book. I was happy, but I was disappointed because it meant that I was the only one who had been unfaithful and treated our relationship with a lack of seriousness. I couldn't bring myself to tell him what I had done behind his back, so I kept quiet about it when he asked me about work. I just kept my reply short, especially when he asked about I was so nervous about the intern. I just stammered and said fine. I'd forgotten I'd told him about Alex during one of our late-night chats. I quickly changed the subject by asking him about his book. Thankfully, he didn't notice my lack of response. He didn't think I wanted to change the subject. Maybe he did. But he didn't mention anything again, and just answered my question and continued to tell me about how the tour went the following week after Max returned. That was the hardest week. Max was trying his hardest to make up for the time he was gone by doing the he was sweet. Picking me up after work and surprising me with homemade food or taking me to dinners and little trips on weekends. It was sweet, but that wasn't the problem. I missed Alex. I couldn't even look him in the eye in the office. I was so tense. I missed our thrilling relationship. The fact that it was obvious he felt the same made it harder. If he'd gone around in the office looking like someone going through a hard breakup, it would have been easier to get over it. But he went around looking like someone going through a hard breakup, and it was hard to watch. It was the day Mitchell, our producer, I told him off for making a big mistake that I knew had badly affected him. He'd sent out unedited material to be printed instead of the edited version. I knew I had to go and see him, so when we finished at work, I asked to speak to him and we went together to his house. I'd called and lied to him. I told Max earlier that I was going to be late because I had work to catch up on. We went over to his place and I asked him why he was being so distracted at work. We'd both agreed to end the whole affair after a week, but, well, we ended up having sex again that night, throwing precautions into the air. We had sex again the next day and the day after that too. I was happy and satisfied, even though I had a good thing going with Max. I don't know how to describe my relationship with Alex, but I was as happy with both of them as I was with Max. I felt I had to tell Max what was going on. I didn't want to do what my dad did. My mom said that he'd promised to be with her but ended up having an affair and getting her pregnant with 2 kids before she found out. I believed that if he'd been honest from the beginning, they wouldn't have had the problems they had. I wasn't being honest with him, even though I'd promised myself I would be. I decided to be transparent with Max about my decision to have an open relationship. I loved him and wanted to get married and have kids with him. But if I wasn't honest with him, I would end up in the same situation as my parents. I made the mistake of telling him. It was the worst decision I could have made. 2 days before I was going to tell him, it was our anniversary. We'd been together a year, and I was planning something special. I thought it would be a good time to tell him what I wanted, as he might be open to it. I was really excited because, as I said earlier, 2 days prior I had booked the most expensive restaurant for us, bought a new dress and lingerie, and Alex shopped with me. I even asked specifically for the restaurant to prepare a cake with happy anniversary on it. It was going to be perfect or not, but I was nervous. I was confident that he loved me enough to want what I wanted, and then what man wouldn't like a free access card to cheat away, even while in a serious relationship? I had to work that day, but I finished early enough to get home and dress up. I even managed to squeeze in a shower. I texted Max earlier to say I was going to meet him at the restaurant, so he'd be surprised when he saw me. I arrived at the restaurant and, of course, Max was stunned by my look. He complimented me and kissed me. We sat down, ordered our dinner and started to eat. We ate, and then the cake came. I was too full to eat much, so I just ate small bites, as did Max. Then Max surprised me by bringing out his new manuscript that he was working on. He showed me that it was dedicated to me. My name was written out in full, and he had written there that he loved and appreciated me and couldn't wait to be together forever. It was his way of showing me that he was ready to go public with our relationship. I wasn't just some girl in his backstory. I was the main event. He was promising a future together. It meant a lot to me because those words were so beautifully written and seemed to come from the heart. I couldn't have wanted anything more. I remember crying, and Max kissed my tears away. It was the sweetest moment. I couldn't spoil it with my own announcement, so I decided to wait until we were back in the house. We got back to the house, and we slept together, and it was amazing. It helped me to clear my doubts about him. But I was still unsure about telling him. Despite knowing he wasn't cheating on me, I couldn't predict the future. I couldn't tell whether there would be someone else there when we were fully committed. It would be better to know your partner's partner than to be caught unawares. So while we lay that night, I told him I had something to say, and he turned to face me. I stammered a bit. But I eventually got everything off my chest, from my parents' relationship to the doubts I had about him to Alex and me, and to wanting an open relationship. Max at first just looked at me without an expression, then he withdrew his hands from my body and stood up from the bed. I started to get scared, not knowing what to expect from his silent reaction. I didn't know what to expect, but I honestly hadn't expected that silent reaction. If he'd shown any emotion that night, it would have been better. He just stood there staring outside our window and said nothing. When I eventually found my voice and begged him to say something, he ignored me and continued staring outside for the whole 30 minutes. He just later walked out of the room. I heard the study door open and then close. I didn't get much sleep that night, wondering what he was thinking at that early hour. I went straight to the study room and knocked, but there was no answer. I waited for a while before the door opened a little and he came outside. He looked at me and smiled. He even kissed me on the forehead. I thought everything was fine between us. I thought maybe he was okay with it, and I was relieved. The next day he told me he had to travel for an emergency work call and didn't explain further. He just promised to be back by the next day. Unfortunately, that day never came. It's already been 2 months. I texted, called, and reached out to everyone I knew who could talk to Max, but no one seemed to be able to reach him. I thought everything between us was fine and that he had forgiven me, and was cool with having an open relationship. I was wrong. I thought it was a good idea to give him reasons to cheat behind my back. I'm really frustrated and sad. I can't even get myself to get up these days because of how I'm feeling. I love Max and I really do want to have a future with him. What do you think I should do? I can't bear the thought of losing him because of what I did. I know I created this mess myself, but I really need help to get my man back. I don't think I can live without him. Please update me on this. Reddit, I'm really struggling at the moment. When I wrote this post, I was hoping someone might understand why I made the choices I did, and give me some advice on how to fix things with Max. Instead, I've only received abuse, which has really affected my mental health. It's been a few weeks since I wrote the post, and I've had time to think about what I did wrong and how my actions affected Max. I know I'm just facing the consequences of my actions, and it's not particularly nice. I can tell you, and the comments weren't exactly helpful either. I've begun to doubt everything I've ever known. All the silly childhood promises I made to myself so I wouldn't have to end up like my parents did. But eventually, I'm just like them. Maybe even worse. I threw away the one good thing I had going with Max, and I will forever regret that. I wonder now if I had been more open with Max from the beginning, how things might have been. Perhaps he could have helped me work through my insecurities and trust him. Maybe I wouldn't be here, making a regretful post. It's so disheartening to lose him. I don't know if words are enough to describe how I feel. Max left our company because of me. My director thinks it's my fault, and is threatening to fire me if I don't get Max to work with us again. I'm on the verge of losing my job. I can't even get hold of him, let alone talk to him. I don't even know where he is or how he's doing. As for Alex, we're not together anymore. He realized that things weren't going well for me. He also broke up with me and has probably moved on to the next exciting thing. It hurts badly because I know he was one reason I lost my relationship. I'm literally about to be jobless, and also don't have any meaningful relationships in my life. My life is just perfect, but that's sarcasm. I cannot even bring myself to tell my family. They would never understand. I don't have any meaningful relationships either. I have literally no one to talk to except you guys. This is really hard on me. I know I'm depressed. I'm on the verge of losing it mentally if I haven't already. How do you go from having everything you've ever wanted to having nothing at all? I really regret losing Max. He was the best thing that ever happened to me. I just lost that because of my own foolishness. I don't even have anything. I've been thinking about open relationships, and how crazy it is that you can be blinded by something that should matter to you. Then when you lose it, you see clearly. It's true what they say about not appreciating what you have until you lose it. I still cannot comprehend just how stupid I was to think I could do those things to Max and get away with them. The painful part is the new book he published after fighting my way through a bunch of eager fans. I was able to get one for myself just to read the dedication. I was really hoping it wouldn't happen, but I wasn't prepared for the pain I felt when I read that even that had changed. He now dedicated it to his new relationship. I knew I hurt him, and I knew he would move on and find someone, but I didn't prepare myself for the pain and torment it caused. I really am to blame. Update. This is my very last post here. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to express myself here. I was able to do that here. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has read my story. Despite the negativity, I'm grateful to have had the chance to express myself freely here. I'm making this last post because I want to say something to Max. If you're reading this, I know you probably don't want to, but I just want to say sorry for the way I treated you. I know I'm a terrible person because you were an amazing colleague and partner. I took advantage of that. I should have been more honest and open with you. I shouldn't have just gone ahead and cheated on you like that. I regret my actions so much. I don't expect you to forgive me because I myself cannot forgive myself. I know I will continue to pay for my sins for the rest of my life. I hope you find someone who appreciates and loves you the same way you did me, and wouldn't take you for granted like I did with you. I'm really sorry. Take care, guys. Don't ever make the same mistakes.